It's really no surprise that we're all feeling a little less motivated than perhaps we should. It's not confusing in the slightest as to how or why this happened. Motivation tends to come from clarity. You know where you're going, you know the goal, the destination, you know the steps in between now and then. But in today's world, in our information revolution, where we have access to every bit of information at the tips of our fingers, and not only do we have access to it, but it kind of floods our system all the time through advertising and through the radio and through just our incessant need not to be in the silence and not to be in the kind of open space void between consuming and creating. That like little space there where it's like, which way do I go? Do I want to treat myself or do I want to go make something? And or should I perhaps just rest? But we're not allowed to rest. So hence why we're here. Hence why we don't feel that motivation. And we mentioned in a previous video, I'll leave a link down below, about bullshit. And essentially, to kind of condense that down into a sentence or two, bullshit is when words don't meet reality, when the two just don't jive together, basically. And clarity is trying to sift through all of that bullshit and trying to get past it to find what is actually relevant to where you want to go or who you want to be. It also stops you from putting out any more bullshit than you necessarily need to, because we all naturally do, because we're a wee bit defensive or we get caught up in something. We just kind of trickle on and then lose connection with reality in the way. So I have an issue, me personally, I actually do have an issue with my stomach. And maybe I could get lost in diet and into micros and the gut health and bacteria in your gut and all this other stuff, and I'd be just, you need to have this, and then pragmatically I either can't afford it or that stuff's not available to me locally or like whatever else. I could just venture off. I need. I want. And we've all got caught up in that loop. We've all kind of lost our way and tumbled for a bit longer in the kind of denial of some fact than we should have. But contact with reality is what makes life the game, is what tilts our imagination away from fantasy and towards reality and makes life invigorating again, makes it fun to play, and life starts to compete for our attention again. The real world starts to compete. The only real question is, do you have a practice that puts you in contact with reality? Or the alternative question is, how long are you going to tumble in denial and refusal when reality does make contact? Because it inevitably will. It makes itself known whether we like it or not. And sometimes we hide away and we fight it and we get caught up and we get lost a bit. And then other times we have the strength to kind of face it and just be like, yeah, that was a bad decision. It comes back to humility versus authenticity. I know that's a struggle where I really am interested in this thing. I want to, and it comes from the bottom. And then there's the humility where you're recognizing that sometimes you can get lost. So the question is whether you have a practice. And then there's the realization that each practice has a blind spot, has a pitfall, has its own loop where it loses contact with reality. So the question then becomes, are you balancing your practices? Are you finding balance in your life? Are you finding moments where you can go off into your own space, into that kind of inside, like, connection with something deeper, perhaps? Are you getting that food for the soul where something speaks to you at like a deep level, through art, through music, through dance, through anything creative, really? And then are you also having moments where you're surrendering into something bigger, where you are offering to a community, whether you are supporting a social network? Are you offering moments where you give yourself to the world? And there's multiple of these dualities. I've gone through the ecology of practices, but let's go through it again, in that we have meditation and contemplation. Coming back to this moment, contemplation being, so again, taking off the glasses, coming into this moment. I'm worrying, I'm stressing, I'm delaying, I'm fantasizing. And then putting on glasses. What would the world be like if I was the guy who drank whiskey and smoked cigars. And who laughed, ha 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 ha. What would life be like if I laughed, ha 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 ha? And that would offer nothing, perhaps, but it might offer a small deviation from my normal state and let me see something different. So there's one case. We have a sitting and a moving practice, individual and a collective practice, and then we have creative and absorptive, where creation comes from yourself, and absorptive is giving yourself into a group. Now, each of these has a strong point, has a point where it will put you in contact with reality in a real and strong sense. It will be a motivating force. It will bring new ideas. It will stretch you in a way. But it does have a downside. As a counterbalance, there are practices to make up for that and pull you back in that direction and have the insights and the creativity on that side. The exercise I want to leave with you then is writing your story up to date as if it was a story and breaking it up into chapters. And you can mark these chapters by events, by high points, by trophies and celebrations and birthdays, like age brackets. Or you can mark it by low points where it is grievances and losses and failures. But just to map out the chapters through your life up to this point and trying to figure out the motif or the character that occupied that space. And then importantly, trying to find the motif between those chapters where you find that overarching theme, that metacognition that passed through each of those chapters. This is an exercise I actually found through creative writing and trying to figure out my own story, to tell my story and how to kind of improve my memory, which is brutal. But I have found it great for knowing myself better and then also knowing where I'm going to. As in, it kind of gives like a trajectory where I've been, who I am today, because the final chapter is up to date, and then where I'm going, and it kind of gives you a run and jump to try and find the clarity of exactly what the next few steps might be. So I'm going to leave that with you today, and we can go on about the downside of this exercise and an alternative practice next week. But for this week, enjoy, hit like, hit subscribe if you want, would appreciate it, and I'll see you next week. Bye guys.